The best way to get Monero in light of recent events, our thoughts on the streaming service Nebula, and open source backup programs for Linux and Windows. Welcome to the Surveillance Report Q&A, or the Q&A for Surveillance Report 178. Not sure how we're going to say that, but whatever. We are here to answer questions from our amazing patrons who help support us at $5 a month or more and make this podcast possible. You can view and join the questions on patreon.com/surveillancepod. We'll jump right into it with Cracker Barrel Biscuits. With the shutdown of local Monero, what is the best way to obtain Monero without having to purchase any crypto with KYC to convert it? This is a great question. I know you said not to KYC, or you're trying to avoid KYC, but to be honest, I think that's going to be the easiest route, especially because pretty much every Monero expert I've spoken to agrees that it's so heavily anonymized now, it really doesn't matter. Like, you could buy Monero directly with KYC, and as soon as you start spending it, it's gone. But if you really did want to try and find a way around it, I know I cannot vouch for any of them. I haven't used any of them personally, but I know that there are a number of decentralized peer-to-peer exchanges. I would maybe look into one of those. I'm going to see if I can find any recommendations for that one. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that while I'm looking into this.
Yeah, I mean, while you're looking, there's a couple things that come to mind. One, yes, you can KYC yourself and either obtain Bitcoin or Monero, or if you're able to get Bitcoin without KYC, it's easy to swap. I feel like it's easier to swap into using Monero than to try to obtain Monero directly at this point in time. I know Haveno is a new project that is just now able to be hosted, and so you have some people who are hosting Haveno. And we also have things like Sarai that might come out soon that might make this easier as well. And yeah, I feel like we've kind of cut out a lot of options. I will say, like, on my end, if I'm going to try to get Monero, it's going to be by like buying Bitcoin and then like swapping it in something like Cake Wallet into Monero and then just going from there, which is what I do.
I think the only thing I'll add is I'm looking at Privacy Guide's website here, and they do have a little section about Monero and cryptocurrency. Your mileage may vary, but I'm on Monero.com right now, and apparently you can just buy Monero directly from their website.
Right, but KYC is a debatable term. Like, yes, you can buy it through one of those services, like Monero.com, you can do that, but like, people debate what KYC is. A lot of people think if it like requires a card, that's still KYC.
Okay, so that's worth noting. It'll still be tied to you from your credit card. You just won't have to upload an ID.
Those are some options.
That's a fair point.
You can get pretty far with just Cake Wallet or Monero or Monero.com or like another wallet that has similar features.
I swear there was one decentralized peer-to-peer that I was looking at.
Bisq is good, but for Bitcoin.
Remember for the life of me.
So
Bisq, that was the one.
You can use Bisq, but it's for Bitcoin, and then you have to swap to Monero.
Which I never really got it working, but I also didn't sink a lot of time into it. So,
and also just the typical disclosure, these are my honest thoughts, but I am working for Cake as well. So, next question is, what are y'all's thoughts on the streaming service Nebula from a creator perspective, privacy perspective, whatever you want to view it as? My thoughts start with, I like the concept. I wish there were more things like this. And it's actually one of the most promising YouTube alternatives I've seen, because there's like real channels that are on there. And I think they're actually like really good, high quality channels. I feel like I've seen a lot of people say that I've actually received several times the comment that people are all in on Nebula, but they wish that Techlore was on Nebula and they were like the last channel that wasn't on Nebula. Probably because we're not high quality enough for Nebula. I say that half jokingly, but I don't know if people have actually looked into this. If you go to Nebula's website, pretend you're a creator with 1 million subscribers. Go to Nebula's website and tell me how you join Nebula. There's no information on their website. There's no like transparent way to join Nebula. And the way that you become a Nebula channel is their like committee of people have to like, you have to essentially know someone who's already in Nebula who suggests you to this committee, and they decide if you get let in. That's my understanding, unironically, of how it works, which is fine. That's what they've chosen to do. But it also means that there's no way for like me to join Nebula even if I want to. So that's my creator perspective. It'd be cool to like even consider it, but A, there's no information on its website, and B, I don't even know how to join it even if I wanted to.
Damn, I didn't know that. I knew it wasn't like just anyone could sign up, because I know somebody suggested it to us before and I've looked into it, But yeah, right here on the FAQ, how do you find new creators? Nebula is not intended as a YouTube competitor, so we are not actively working toward an open platform. Our content and our roster are carefully curated by the creators to make sure that anything shown here is something we can all stand behind. I'm with you. I like the idea of Nebula from a creator perspective. I haven't really looked into it for privacy because I just haven't had a reason to. I do agree. I think it's like the only one that solves, because every time, and I feel like I just went on this rant recently. The issue that I keep running into from a creator perspective with, okay, so like actually, let's use PeerTube as an example because I've actually run into this one. I have a lot of creators on YouTube that I follow that I would be interested on following on PeerTube. And I've thought about hitting them up and being like, hey, can I mirror your channel to my instance? It's totally free. There's no ads. I'm not going to make any money off you. It's just a way to get them off YouTube. And the first thing I expect them to ask me is, how much crack did you smoke this morning? There's this narrative that YouTube ads don't pay a lot of money. And maybe that's true if you're like a big enough channel where you can actually get sponsors and stuff. But for me, on a good year, I make about $500 a year on YouTube. And I'm telling you right now, that's more than I get in donations or merch sales or anything like that.
Just to outline for the record, this is for the New Oil solely.
Yes,
not
the New Oil.
surveillance
Sorry.
report, but for New Oil. Just clarifying.
It actually, surveillance report is my biggest source of income. But after that, my second biggest is probably going to be YouTube ads. And that's for someone who's like scraping together 5 minutes at the end of the day to like write out a paragraph for a script. If you're a full-time creator who's getting tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views per video, even if you have those sponsorships, it's like, why would you move to another platform? When you look at it from their perspective, every time I see somebody like, oh, you should move to this other platform. Why? Oh, because it's better for privacy. That's cool. My landlord doesn't give a crap about privacy. They still want to get paid. They still need the rent. There's no incentive, is what I'm trying to say. There's no incentive for them. And I think Nebula actually has that incentive. There's one YouTuber in specific I follow, Joe Scott, who has like extra channels that he posts only on Nebula, where it's like, here's the full interview with this person, or here's like a video where I went into deep dives, or like he did a medical video recently where all the like pictures were censored because of YouTube. And he's like, if for some reason you hate yourself and you want to see these uncensored medical pictures, they're over on Nebula. From a creator perspective, I think that's what's interesting about Nebula is that they do actually have that monetization model in place. Whereas everything else that people keep trying to come up with, it's like there's a moral reason to join it, but there's no practical reason until you have something like Twitter where the owner drives everybody away to another platform. But that's kind of all I get. And especially now that I know that it's like heavily curated, I think that actually works in their favor because it creates almost like a prestige thing where it's like just not anybody can get on Nebula. Like you have to meet a certain quality standard. I think that's really interesting.
Right. I actually don't mind it. I wish as someone who actually enjoys what Nebula is trying to do and would love to be a part of it and like get my content there, it sucks really not even knowing what to do. Like I can't do anything and it's fine. It just means I'm not going to be joining it or putting much mental energy into trying to join it, even though I want to.
Well, and that's funny because I saw this question earlier and I remembered, I'm like, somebody did ask about that. And at the time I didn't really know what it was. And like I said, I've seen Joe Scott do his thing where I'm like, maybe we could look into this as like an alternative to Patreon. Like if you sign up on Nebula, you can get our full podcast with all the goodies and extras in it. And I was going to bring that up to you. And then, yeah, turns out we can't even apply anyways. So whatever. I mean, yeah, if you know somebody at Nebula, let them know we're definitely interested. It seems okay. And our last question from David Johnson, what open source backup programs for Linux and Windows do you use or would recommend? In particular, what software do you think is best for automating regular scheduling of backups, incremental backups, data deduplication, etc., that is open source and has been examined by experts in the field? First of all, I think finding both of those requirements might be a bit of a stretch. Y'all are going to hate me. I don't really do data backups because I do them manually. So Cubes has its own way of doing backups that I just run once a week. And then for 99% of what I do on Windows, I work directly out of Nextcloud, which is also part of my weekly backups. I back up all my servers that I host, like Jellyfin, Nextcloud, Mastodon, stuff like that. So I'm not the right person to ask, but I would refer to Alternative 2. That's the best I got.
Yeah, I think that this is tough, especially cross-platform. It's always really tough to find a good backup solution that you can apply to one operating system and then replicate that super easily on another one and then make them cross-compatible so that, and it's just really difficult. I found to avoid that entire nonsense situation, I found the best solution for people who watch Techlore content, you might know, centralize it somewhere else. The way I'm thinking of my devices now, ever since I got my Synology NAS, is the NAS stores my data. Devices are just a way to access data. So there's so many benefits to this. Data portability, it means I can pick up and switch operating systems overnight, and that's okay because all my data is going to look exactly the same on the new device. As long as I connect to my NAS, all my data now shows up on the device, just like it did on Mac OS, just like it would on Windows, just like it would on Cubes. It doesn't matter. It also means that each device is almost like a blank slate. So, it doesn't matter if my laptop gets stolen, because my data is not on the laptop. My data is on my NAS. And then it's super easy to do backups of your NAS, right? Like you can have a second NAS that you keep at a different location. And Synology, for example, allows you to replicate things and constantly do backups on a daily basis. And it's all automated. Personally, I use Zero Knowledge Backup with Hetzner. So I just use Hetzner as an offsite backup in the cloud. And it's automatic. It runs, I think, every day or something like that. And so at most, the amount of data I'm going to lose is on a daily basis, and that's assuming worst case scenario. There's a million things you can do. I just kind of gave up. I feel like the only ecosystem that actually has a usable backup system that works within its ecosystem is Apple, for better or for worse, right? Like you can plug in an iPhone to a MacBook and just click backup, and it just backs up the thing to it. Or if you use iCloud, everything's just backed up automatically. Now you can do it with end-to-end encryption. I think Google's kind of getting there with the Pixel, but then how does that function with a Windows machine if you're using Windows and an Android device, or Linux and an Android device? So it's just really hard to roll out individual ecosystems unless you're all in on the Apple ecosystem and you can use end-to-end encrypted backups there, or you're using something that consolidates all your data in one place like a NAS. Or you can do the NAS thing, but locally. Kind of like Nate was saying, you can just have a hard drive or something like that you can use to consolidate your data away from your devices. But those are kind of my approaches to looking at this.
Yeah, just kind of to add on to that, I did look into this a while back because on the new oil, I do recommend doing backups of your devices. And I recommended how like Windows and Mac both have these built-in features. I don't know about several, but at least one person pointed out, they're like, well, number one, Windows backup kind of sucks. Apparently, it's unreliable sometimes. And number two, manual backups aren't good because you forget to do them sometimes, which is true. I went looking for better options because people said, like, you should find better options. There's really not a lot of good ones, especially ones that meet all the different requirements that you've listed. The best I have is I know some Linux distros, like I think Mint comes built in with backup utilities. I don't know how good they are, but it could be worth looking into if you're on a distro that offers that.
I gotta say, for people, whether or not you love or hate Apple, I don't think a single person ever, like I've met some serious Apple haters. Dude, they nailed like backups and Time Machine and everything. Like there is no one else who's done this. And this is something super cool. You can't just plug in an Android device, click backup to a computer, throw the phone in the ocean, buy the same phone from the store, plug it back in, and just restore it like nothing happened. Literally no one's done that. Only Apple's been able to do that. And it's kind of crazy because I would love to see that on Android, at least like seamlessly like built into it. I think we're getting close now. Again, I've seen Google make some improvements now to their backup, but it'd be awesome, especially locally. I think that's what's really like different. You can plug it in and do a local encrypted backup with a password, and it's really well done. So I wish more services did that.
And then real quick, David Johnson had a part two. You said, as an aside, Nate mentioned ThinkPad laptops for Cubes in the last Q&A. For the record, that's just what I have. I don't necessarily have an affinity to ThinkPad. I appreciate that they're very Linux friendly, but that's about where my love for them ends. NitroKey seems to configure and sell those with several hardware improvements of its own. Have you or people you know bought Cubes, ThinkPad laptops, or desktops from NitroKey and used them? And if so, what has your experience been? I have not. I definitely will be going forward because the last two laptops I bought, one of which was the System 76, which there's a whole video about that, it was nightmarish. And I even, with my current laptop that I was planning to dual boot Cubes on, I went and made sure. I looked at the hardware compatibility list and I still had issues. Cubes is nightmarish to install. I don't know what the issue is, but it sucks. I'm not going to lie. And I'm at the point where if I'm going to buy a really expensive laptop anyways, because that's what I do, I may as well just spend a couple extra $100 and get a device that I know out of the box is going to work with cubes. So it's very much a privilege thing, but that's my plan. I'm totally going to buy one from NitroKey next time. I don't have experience with their laptops, but I do have experience with the Nitro keys. I have one in my Windows computer right now. I did a video where I reviewed one and their customer service was outstanding. The device was outstanding. I was very, very happy. I know there's a huge difference between a hardware key and a laptop, so we'll see if I'm still happy in a couple of years when I buy one of those. But yeah, for now, they've won me over as a fan, and I definitely plan on buying from them. And I trust the experience will be good just based on my past experience with them. And also just a shameless self-promotion that the New Oil does have a NitroKey affiliate link. If anybody decides to buy anything from them, it would help us out. It's thenewoil.org/NitroKey. All right, so those were our questions this week. The best way to get Monero now that local Monero is sadly shutting down. Our thoughts on Nebula, I think are positive so far, but we don't really know firsthand. And open source backup solutions, not a lot of great options out there. So I hate to keep asking the community, but if you have good suggestions, always feel free to leave them in the comments, because we definitely don't know everything. And you guys are constantly letting us know about new tools, new services. So maybe there is something good out there and we just haven't found it yet. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for the questions. We really appreciate them and the support of all of our patrons. If you would like to become a patron and ask a question or just support the podcast, be sure to check out the link down in the descriptions, patreon.com/surveillancepod. And we will see you this coming weekend with another episode of news.